Sin always costs us more than what we want to pay, and it always takes us further than what we want to go.
Whenever, at a young age, parents got divorced, and there was, some little scars that kind of had added up.
I'm Graham Wright. We're here today to talk about our recovery program. This program is designed for men that struggle with inappropriate sexual behavior. And our goal is to help them recognize what's going on in their own life and that they're running to something that's inappropriate instead of running to the Father when life gets hard. When I'm struggling with depression, anxiety, when I get a review that I don't necessarily like and care for. And so when life gets tough, that's when we run to things that are inappropriate. And oftentimes what we don't understand is that the fact that that starts at a very young age. And so as I learn to cope with life at a young age, that starts this neurological pathway that creates this process of inappropriate behavior that leads to, James 1:15. Desire, when it's conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin fully grown brings forth death. And so the desire to not hurt, the desire to not be wounded, the desire to cope with life is not a bad desire. But what it brings forth is sin when it's done inappropriately. And then that brings forth eventually death in many different ways. Not necessarily physical death, but other types of deaths that are in our world. And so we have a program that helps go from acknowledging that I have a problem to praising God for what He's doing in our life and in the whole process between. Of going from I'm broken, and now I'm going to recognize my brokenness. I'm going to embrace my brokenness. I'm going to throw myself at the throne of Christ. I'm going to work as a process and a system along with other men like yourselves. And then from there, I'm going to see God do some amazing things in my life. He's going to restore my heart back to Him. He's going to give me the capacity to see my other brothers and become vulnerable, become known, become exposed and accountable. Possibly for the first time in my life, I'm going to be able to recognize that I can be empathetic with the loved ones in my life that I wasn't able to see before because life was all about me in the midst of my addiction. And then as God starts to change our heart and as we start to experience this new capacity of love and being empathetic, then I start to get downwind of my own sin and I see the opportunity for God to continue to change my heart. And that's where this restoration process really starts to begin. And so we're going to talk about the journey from, again, my addiction to God's redemptive story today. And so I'll start off with the way my life looked before acknowledging that I had a problem. My wife and I always thought growing up that when I got married that this struggle that I had would just go away. Because I thought it was all about the action, right? It was about the pornography. It was about sex. And then when I got married, it just would stop because I'd be able to have as much sex as I want, be able to look at my wife like I wanted to, whenever I wanted to, and life would just be great. Well, what I found out 45 days in is that's not the case, right? After about 45 days, some of the newness wore off, but it wasn't even the newness that wore off as much as it was, again, the patterns that I had created inside my brain because of all these years of doing the same thing. They said, hey, look, we haven't gone away yet. And when you had that bad argument with your wife, guess who's still here ready to take you in and let you do whatever you want, however you want, in that inappropriate way. And so I know that for me, prior to confessing my sin to my wife and disclosing to her everything, life was about lying, was about manipulation, the problem was never me. I mean, things would be blowing up around me and it was always somebody else's problem. It was you that created the issue. It was you that started this. It was you that said that. And oftentimes I was the common denominator. And so here I am trying to protect my lie, my sinful self, and I'm blaming everybody else for that, including my wife and my daughter. One of the worst places I've ever been is my wife and I were having a bad argument one night, and she just said, "Look, I'm going to bed. You take care of Maddie." And Maddie probably was about a year and a half old, and so we were still putting her to bed. Well, I wanted to be acting out. I didn't want to be putting Maddie down. And our precious little girl knew that there was this strife that was just going on inside of me, anger. And I was trying to put her to sleep. I was trying to rock her to go to sleep. And 30 minutes in, 45 minutes in, an hour in, she's still crying. She's not happy. And she can just feel me getting angry and angrier. And that night ended with me putting my fist through the wall next to her bed because I was so mad because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Sin always costs us more than what we want to pay, and it always takes us further than what we want to go. And that was recognized that evening. And so for me, prior to disclosure, my life was creating chaos in the lives of others around me. And that ended with my wife and I almost divorced. She finally said, look, I'll go to counseling. Because I kept telling her she was the problem. She needed to go to counseling. She finally said, look, I'll go to counseling, but you're coming with me. And so I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I knew that I did not want to be the chaos in my life, in my family's life. And so I said, look, in my heart of hearts, I said, I need to be honest here, and I need to really move forward with this in full honesty. And so I answered all the questions that the counselors asked us, which included, are you having an affair? Are you looking at pornography? What are you looking at? Intervals, all that kind of stuff. Because my desire was to be done with this. Because I knew that if something didn't change, the death that James is talking about was about to happen in my marriage. So 3 days before we went to our first counseling session, I disclosed everything to Kristen and joined a recovery program similar to ours. And that started this path of healing. That was almost 15 years ago. And by the grace of God, we are still married today, almost 21 years in. Our kiddos are beautiful and amazing. Our relationship today is, it's like it never had been. In fact, I'm gonna love to, we're gonna hear your honeymoon story here in a minute that we're excited about 23 years in. And so let's start with Andrew. Andrew, I mean, I kind of shared with you what was going on in my life prior to disclosure. What did that look like in your relationship with your wife before disclosure?
Yeah, I'd say unfortunately there was not disclosure, there was discovery. But before that, it looked a lot like compartmentalization, like you said, protecting my own lie, really kind of building this mirage and putting on like a mask every day that, I was okay. I was going to make sure everybody else was okay. Make sure she had no idea that like I either had this struggle, that I was hurting, I was lying. I mean, really just kept everything in its own little buckets. And yeah, so I think whenever, at a young age, parents got divorced, and there was, some little scars that kind of had added up. Saw pornography and masturbation at the first time at 12 years old. And that just kind of led to this kind of, I'd say, lifetime journey up until this point, of just, acting out whenever life got tough. And like you said, I think, it'll cost you everything. It led me to, acting out, seeking women outside my marriage, gambling. I mean, you name it. I mean, I was going to the depths of the world to find ways to, make myself feel good, but to really make sure I was covering everything up. But December 2021, everything kind of got blown up. And kind of same thing. Wife was saying, I'm pregnant. I'm never going to let you see my kid. I'm going to take our dogs. I'm going to take our house. Like, you can hit the road. So, we had that 2 or 3 days where it was just D-Day, right? So, but then we kind of got into some counseling together, and we went together, had a proper disclosure with our counselor, went through everything, and, she got asked the question she wanted to ask, and, the truth she wanted to know. So kind of that, beforehand was just, it was rough. I think it took it blowing up, and I think I'm at that point now where I can look back and say I'm so glad God intervened when he did, because if I would have kept doing it, I had the opportunity to, make right before I had kids. And so I'm super thankful that God gave me that opportunity.
Heath, what about your story?
I got like a double story.
You do?
Yeah, I get to do it twice, unfortunately. I think my first marriage, got married 25 and was already into all the porn and masturbation, and that was due from pain from childhood. My sister abused me growing up. We had sex together several times, and so I learned. I was 10 to 12. Learned very quickly and early. Some things were firing in my brain that weren't supposed to fire, and through that, then all of a sudden you start to realize that that feels really good. All that dopamine hit, it really impacts the structure of how your brain is operating. I think I've learned that now. I didn't realize it at the time, obviously. So then you seek it out. I just sought it out constantly, seeking it out. Ended up getting married at 25, which is about 25 years ago. And then got discovered within 5 years, I guess, right after the birth of our second daughter. And my world blew up because I was not that person at all. I denied ever even being enticed by any pornography or masturbation. And so once that got figured out, went in through a program that was similar to ours, more probably 12-step oriented specifically, but a little bit of faith-based stuff, Celebrate Recovery stuff, and held on, kind of white-knuckled for years. Ended up not being enough to save the marriage, and then I decided the smartest thing to do was to go back, because that was obviously going to help me get through the pain of a very contentious divorce.
Go back to your addiction.
That's right. Sorry, yeah. Go back to the addiction, because that fixes everything. Yeah. And so it's that picture of, the alcoholic looking for the drink or whatever you want. It's just, you just dive back in and you go hard. And so I went hard. And then ended up finding a woman that is beautiful, my now wife. And about 3 months after we got married, maybe 4 months after we got married, 6 months after we got married, discovery happened with her of texting other women and deleting them, being inappropriate with other women, deleting texts, deleting phone messages, and obviously looking at porn regularly while driving. Any chance I could. And so we found you through a couple different avenues, and then started in the group, and have been completely sober and clean and free of any of those daggers, hooks, whatever you want to call them, sin, I guess, free of the prison. Yeah.
Jeremy, what did it look like when either you chose to go to your precious wife or she found out what was going on? Tell us about the learning of what was going on in your life.
With us, it was something she discovered. I didn't bring it to her. She discovered it when I was in a place that she didn't feel was suitable for her to bring to my attention, that she'd made that discovery. I was just going through some life changes, and she didn't want to present to me what she had discovered. She thought maybe this was temporary. This is something that I'm in a different state of mind. She was making excuses for herself because her husband, who conveyed and portrayed himself to be someone that he ended up not being, couldn't be this guy. So I think she was able, to a degree, to dismiss it for a period of time. That led to her medicating her own way to do things that she thought would numb her pain, because I wasn't strong enough to come out of the shadows and share with her what I was struggling with, what I'd struggled with long before she had any idea. Her discovery of my problem wasn't a new problem. It was a 20-year-old problem that I brought into our marriage. And, I had moments of sobriety, periods of time where I'd white-knuckled it, and I'd have accountability partners with guys at church, and we'd hold each other accountable, but we didn't all have the same walk or struggle. So yeah, mine coming out was her confronting me after I was berating her for a struggle that she was going through. And yeah, I hit my knees, and in a matter of a second, it was probably just a fleeting second, her discovery of me was the biggest relief I've ever felt in my life, because I knew now was the day I have to get help. At the same time, I thought, wow, is my marriage going to last? Because I knew her opinions of pornography was infidelity. It was I was betraying her, and she had every right in the world to pick up and walk out. But she didn't. She stood strong, and she stood by me. Her struggles continued. Ours did too. But yeah, got a hold of Graham, and the rest isn't history, because recovery isn't recovered. It's recovery.
Amen.
So I look forward to being with you guys for a long, long, long time.
Yeah.